Now, you guys probably won't believe me when I say this, but this video was not too much fun to make because I don't like calling any player overrated. They work super hard to get to the big leagues, so I just want to preface this by saying I don't hate any of these players, but once I start saying these names, I think that you guys will tend to agree that yes, I think they are a little bit overhyped or possibly overrated. So without further ado, part 2 in this little mini series where we talked about the most underrated players. That'll be in the top right towards the end of the video, and then now the most overrated players from every team in Major League Baseball. If you want to see more, let's get 1,000 likes on this video, and without further ado, let's start talking baseball. Starting with the Los Angeles Angels, the player that I think is most overrated, I'm putting that in quotations because he just had his best year in 2019. He was actually an all-star, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to repeat what he did. We're talking about Stella. From 2014 to 2018, his first 400 career Major League Baseball games, he combined to have 10 home runs in almost 400 games. And then in 2019, I don't know if it was just the fact that he's playing with Mike Trout. Maybe he fixed his swing, maybe it was the launch angle, maybe it was the juice baseballs, but he erupted for 16 bombs in 80 games. Unfortunately, his season was cut by injury, so I do want to say I think that Stella did have a great year, but because of his flash in the pan season as well as his subpar defense, I don't know if you can say that Stella can repeat it. So in my opinion, he is the first overrated player going into 2020 if the season starts. Josh Reddick made $13 million last season to be one of the worst hitters in the American League. Yeah, he had a 275 batting average, but his OPS was at 728. That is not good, but he actually improved from 2018. He went from a 718 OPS to a 728. Really, the only good season he's had was back in 2017 with the Stros, and we all know what happened that year, so yeah, $13 million for a subpar offensive player and maybe a decent defensive player at best. Josh Reddick is definitely overrated. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, the Oakland A's, it was a little bit tough to find an overrated player because they never overpay for a guy and they usually find players with high value at a low cost. But Jake Diekman, he was a very interesting case. So if you've never heard of the stat FIP, fielding independent pitching, the lower it is, the better you are as a pitcher. And he had a 3.55 in 2019, and just for context, the average last season was a 4.2, so he was an above average pitcher in the FIP department. He didn't give up a lot of home runs, and he also struck out a ton of guys. So what's his issue? He gives up oh my gosh, I can't believe how many guys he's walked. He's had an 8.4 walks per 9 last season. He tapped out at 7.1 walks per 9 for the A's. So his problem is he walks a lot of people and then he gives up a base hit. So it's not the home runs. He does strike out a lot. He's very efficient, but he is overrated because he's not accurate, and that causes a lot of damage. Randall Grichuk got a pretty big contract before the 2019 baseball season, so you would have thought that he would have had his best season. He just got paid. He's going to show the Blue Jays that he's worth it. And his counting stats were actually pretty decent with 31 home runs and 80 RBIs in 151 games. But if we take a look at the more in-depth stats, he was terrible defensively. Well, maybe not terrible defensively. He wasn't good by any means with a negative .8 defensive WAR, but his offensive stats, the one that I really want to pay attention to is his OPS. A 738 OPS is not going to cut it. And also, he had 35 walks to 163 strikeouts. So he was really just, his counting stats were great, but if you take a look at the in-depth stats, he truly was overrated. Now again, I don't dislike Randall Grichuk, but for what we're talking about today, he does make the list. I remember when Dansby Swanson was first drafted out of Vanderbilt. I was watching live. He was still on the field with all of his teammates. It was an awesome moment. But up until this year, last year, 2019, he was not good. Now, his rookie season, he had an 803 OPS in 38 games. I thought he was going to be the next Derek Jeter. Then he slipped to a 636 OPS in 2017. He improved it to 699 the next season. And then in 2019, he kind of broke out with 17 home runs, 10 stolen bases, a 748 OPS, and a pretty good defensive WAR at .7. So anytime it's above 0 and it's positive, that's a good season as a defensive player. But I just think that he's overhyped. I thought he was going to be the next Derek Jeter. Everyone said that he was going to be. He hasn't really lived up to that, but he is only just 25 years old. He can get better and better and better, which I'm hoping for, because again, I don't like calling Dansby Swanson overrated, but thus far in his career, I think I'm on it. One of the most disliked players in all of Major League Baseball, Ryan Braun at 35 years old, wasn't too bad with the stick, 22 home runs and 849 OPS. Now, we've seen better from Ryan Braun in the past, and I wonder, yeah, it's because of steroids back in the past, but he got paid $19 million to be a terrible defender, a negative .9 defensive WAR. I just don't see what's special about him anymore. I mean, including the fact that he's making almost $20 million, it's just not worth it. It's really not. Cardinals fans are not going to like me after saying this, but I truly think that Harrison Bader might be the most overrated player on today's list. I'll give you it. He's quick, and he's one of the better defenders in the outfield. He's got a great arm, and he can cover a ton of ground because of that speed. But a 680 OPS leaves him as one of the worst hitters in the entire league. Not just National League, but American League including. I mean, there are some pitchers out there like Zach Greinke that can do better with the bat. So I'm hoping that Harrison Bader can fix it sometime soon. I'm not expecting him to hit 20 home runs or have a 1,000 OPS like Mike Trout, but can we get to 700? Please? Coming from an Indians fan, I can tell you that ex-Chicago White Sox pitcher Jose Quintana was one of my least favorite pitchers to play because he always shut us down. He was nasty back in his prime, but ever since he signed with the Chicago Cubs, but his biggest issue is the fact that he doesn't strike out 12 hitters per 9 innings. He does sit at a pretty okay 8 strikeouts per 9, but his 10.1 hits per 9 in 2019 was like, you can't get past that. If you're giving up 10 base hits and then walking a few hitters in between, it's just not going to result in a productive season, and we saw that. At a 4.68 ERA, I'm pretty sure that if you're a Cubs fan, every time that he took the mound, you were pretty much expecting him to give up 3 to 4, maybe 5 runs every single outing, and honestly, that's just not winning baseball. You can't get by with that, and especially at $10.5 million, definitely overrated. 2017 was the year for Robbie Ray. At 25 years old, he had a 2.89 ERA and a league-leading 12.1 strikeouts per 9. The dude was electric. But fast forward to 2019, his ERA has ballooned from 2.8 all the way up to 4.3, and his FIP, his fielding independent pitching, again, the league average last year was 4.2. He sat at a 4.29, so he's getting paid more and more and more because of that flash in the pan season back in 2017, but he hasn't been able to replicate it because even in 2018, his FIP was at 4.3. So yeah, Robbie Ray, unfortunately, I know he's nasty, and maybe he has to go to a different team because the ball flies down in Arizona. Kind of overrated. Oh man, what are we doing here? What are we doing? AJ Pollock, what? 15 home runs, cool. 795 OPS, cool. A -1 defensive WAR, are you kidding me, AJ Pollock? And then if we go, oh, get this. In the 2019 National League Division Series against the Nationals, when the Dodgers desperately needed some offensive help, in 14 plate appearances, the dude struck out 11 times. He had 0 base hits. Okay, no disrespect to the next player, Evan Longoria, one of my favorite third basemen in my lifetime. Him, David Wright, I even like Casey Blake back in the day. I love his game. It's just not really worth it anymore because the Giants, they decided to give 32-year-old Evan Longoria a fat contract. And now, I don't want to get this video too confusing to the point where it's like, is this overrated or is this an overpaid video? They kind of go hand in hand. You can be overrated and overpaid at the same time because realistically, he wasn't the worst. At 33 years old, he had 20 home runs and a 762 OPS, but I think that you can get that production for a whole lot cheaper because he made $15 million last year. So again, I'm not trying to make this into an overpaid video, but I think that we can all agree at this moment in time, we're not expecting a whole lot from Evan Longoria, but because it's Evan Longoria, it's just not good enough. Oh, here's one that we can all definitely get behind. Jake Bauers of the Cleveland Indians. You guys know I'm a Tribe fan, so I should have some experience in this department. What was this trade? We traded Jake Bauers for Yandy Diaz, and Yandy Diaz erupted in 2019. Now, he wasn't earth-shattering. He wasn't Manny Ramirez over for the Tampa Bay Rays, but he was definitely a whole lot better than Jake Bauers, who in 117 games, he managed to hit 12 home runs, which I guess is all right, but a 683 OPS, that puts him on par with Harrison Bader. The only thing, though, is Harrison Bader is a good defender. Jake Bauers had a -0.8 defensive WAR, and on top of that, had a negative offensive WAR. So if you add those together, he had a -0.7 WAR for the entire season. Excuse me? That's terrible. I don't know if we've seen a player with more empty stats and an empty season than 2019 26-year-old Daniel Vogelbach. His counting stats, again, just like Randal Grichuk, aren't too bad. 30 home runs and 76 RBIs. He had 92 walks, which is pretty good, but 149 strikeouts, a 208 batting average. Now again, people say batting average doesn't matter anymore. Well, let's look at the OPS. You would think a guy that's hitting 30 home runs would have a 1,000 OPS. He was sitting down there at a 780 with a negative 1.5 defensive WAR. I like Daniel Vogelbach. He's a cool guy. I like using his card in MLB The Show, but not a very good overall baseball player. I'm not being hyperbolic or overdramatic when I say that Caleb Smith of the Miami Marlins has the stuff to be one of the better pitchers in the National League, but he can't seem to put it together. He had 168 strikeouts in 153 innings. He's nasty, but he also led the NL in home runs given up at 33. And again, that FIP stat. Make sure you guys pay attention to FIP because it really shows just how valuable a pitcher can be. Sometimes it's a little misleading, but overall, I really do like that stat. Remember, the average was 4.2. He was sitting at a 5.11. A lot of people said that Caleb Smith was going to be the real deal because in 2018, he tapped out at a 3.96 FIP. We thought that he was going to be on the road to being a good pitcher, and he regressed. I would love nothing more than to see a comeback season from 37-year-old Robinson Cano. The Mets are supposed to be really good this season, and if he competes at a high level, maybe he has a Nelson Cruz-like season where maybe not the power, but he is productive as an offensive player even at that age. A 736 OPS in 2019. Yes, he was injured. He doesn't strike out a lot, which is nice, especially at that age. He just doesn't play good defense anymore. He's not going to steal 10 bags or 8 bags like he used to. He's kind of a liability on the base paths, if anything. I just don't trust Robinson Cano, but I am hoping for a bounce back season. I really just cannot understand why Yan Gomes continues to get paid like he's a superstar catcher. He made $7 million last season, and he made a good amount with the Indians. He had one good season back in 2014. Actually, he had back-to-back good seasons, 2013 and 14. And ever since then, he's been a very below-average offensive force. Now, granted, he does play a pretty good defense, but is that worth what the Nationals are giving him for 2020? In my opinion, I don't think so. Now, again, I'm not hating on any of these players. I'm just trying to equate value to what they're getting paid and their projection going forward. Does he bounce back at 32 years old? Probably not. I'm not going to harp on the Orioles for too long because, again, the product that they put on the field, aside from Trey Mancini, what are they really doing? And hopefully Adley Rutschman can reverse the curse and make the Orioles prevalent again. But Michael Gibbons is not doing himself any favors. He was pretty good back in the day in 2016 and 2017. Really good. He didn't get the most amount of saves because he wasn't a closer. But as soon as he stepped into that closing role in 2018, he started to slip. And then even more so in 2019, he pretty much single-handedly ruined my chance at being a champion in my fantasy league. So there could be some bias. He's nasty with an almost 12.5 strikeouts per 9, but he walks a lot of guys. He gives up a ton of base hits. He gives up the occasional home run. Just wasn't very good. I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but Manny Machado got paid and then proceeded to have one of his worst seasons in the big leagues. So for right now, the Padres, I think Manny Machado is their overrated player. I mean this when I say that I hate the fact that Rhys Hoskins has to make today's video. And he makes today's video because he was so horrifically bad in 2019 that I can't really see him getting out of it to start 2020. Maybe because there's never been a 9-month layover in the history of baseball that he's able to find what was causing him to strike out a whole lot more, not driving runners when there were runners in scoring position, because he was one of the worst in baseball at driving in runs when they were in a position to score. We can look to 2018 second half Jose Ramirez and even 2019 first half Jose Ramirez for pretty much an entire 150 game schedule. He was horrible. I thought that he was actually starting on the decline and not going to be the same J-Ram, but I believe that Rhys Hoskins can do the same. Unfortunately, he does make today's list because if he's not hitting, he's playing bad defense. So bad hitting, bad defense, definitely overrated, but I'm hoping for a turnaround. The most overrated player from the Pittsburgh Pirates, this one is the easiest of today's video. Chris Archer. I feel bad for bringing this up again, but Chris Archer in a trade for Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow, I'm so sorry. Rougned Odor is another example as to a guy that put up some pretty good counting stats, but if we take a look at the more in-depth stats, they were really just kind of empty. He had 30 home runs and 93 RBIs. You would think that that's pretty good. Also, when you have a guy that's hitting that many home runs and stealing 11 bags, that's a pretty productive baseball player, right? Not really, as he only had a 283 on base percentage and then ended the season with the 721 OPS. When you're playing as many as 145 games, you end the season with a exact 0.0 WAR. Something's definitely off. Overrated. I've never quite understood the hype. I'm putting hype in quotations because I don't think that anyone has Joey Wendell in their top 100 baseball players, but considering his 2018 season where he almost won Rookie of the Year, he was actually 4th in Rookie of the Year. He dropped all the way down to a 633 OPS. I just don't understand how that's usable. I mean, maybe he's versatile. He can play a couple different positions. He's got a solid glove on his hand. I just don't understand Joey Wendell. I really don't. I might catch some flack for this one, but I truly think that Andrew Benintendi has a high ceiling and he is just not living up to expectations. He's 24 years old, so again, I will give him that. I think that he has more productive seasons ahead of him, but if we're being transparent and honest, we have to look at the stats. A 774 OPS is very middle of the road, but 140 strikeouts in 138 games to go along with only 13 home runs. Yes, he had 40 doubles, which was actually pretty good with 10 stolen bases, but just like a lot of the guys on this list, you can't have average offense to go along with bad defense. He finished the season with a negative 0.5 defensive WAR. Not going to cut it. I'm hoping for a bounce back season because the Red Sox, they're going to need Benny to be Mr. Benny Biceps. The Cincinnati Reds were a tough team to choose an overrated player, just like the Oakland A's, because again, I think that the Reds, they do a pretty good job at not overpaying and finding guys that have pretty good value at a low cost. I mean, Derek Dietrich really, I think he made veterans minimum in 2019. He had 19 home runs. He pretty much ended Chris Archer's career with that bomb down in Pittsburgh. But a 187 batting average, I know it can somewhat be combated with that 790 OPS. Just the fact that he only had 47 base hits in 113 games, played subpar defense. I mean, in 2018 alone, he had a -3 defensive WAR. You just can't trust him on the field, and honestly, with the 187 batting average, he's gonna get out more than his fair share. It's just not good. From 2014 to 2016, Wade Davis had a combined 1.18 ERA and a crazy 1.86 FIP. Fielding independent pitching. That is one of the craziest stretches of relief pitching that this game has ever seen, and it's so sad what happened to him. He got a huge contract to go to the Rockies, and honestly, I mean, if you're a pitcher, you go to the Rockies to end your career. You can take a look at Ubaldo Jimenez. Had one good first half, threw a no-hitter, and then could never recapture it. Same with Kyle Freeland, same with German Marquez. The ceiling is capped down at Coors Field, and Wade Davis was actually a huge victim of it. A 4.13 ERA in his first season, and it ballooned all the way to an 8.65 ERA with a 5.56 whip in 2019. I mean, his strikeouts were down, his walks were up. Overall, he's getting paid so much money to pretty much be horrible. Danny Duffy and Caleb Smith are pretty much the exact same pitcher. They have nasty stuff, but they walk a lot of guys and they give up a ton of home runs as well as their fair share of base hits. Now, I will say that Danny Duffy, he lowered his whip to a 1.3 in 2019, which is actually not too bad. And we've seen that Danny Duffy can be pretty good in 2014. He had a 2.53 ERA. But he's not able to replicate it, and unfortunately, he's getting paid more and more and more. $15 million in 2019 to have a 4.78 FIP, which is not good at all. Definitely overpaid, definitely overrated. Back in 2011, the Toronto Blue Jays picked up a stud prospect in Daniel Norris. I honestly thought that he was going to be the next David Price, but he was more known for things off the field, unfortunately, as opposed to what he did on the diamond. He bought a van, he was one with nature, all of this crazy stuff. I would share a beer with him any day. I'm sure he's a great guy to go camping with, but a 4.49 ERA, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? A 7.8 strikeouts per 9 isn't too great. He walks about 3 hitters per 9 innings. He had a 4.61 FIP. Maybe he can have an Andrew Miller type comeback where he's really bad and then can turn it around because someone fixes it. I don't know. I don't believe in Daniel Norris at all. Oh my God, Marwin Gonzalez stole $12 million from the Minnesota Twins. He was injured for most of the year, but even when he was playing, I mean, Marwin Gonzalez is not worth $12 million. I'm sorry. Him and Harrison Bader gotta be the most overrated players in this video, right? I honestly just can't take him serious, Marwin Gonzalez, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the Chicago White Sox, the second to last team. You guys know the last one is the Yankees, but it's so funny, like I can't figure this guy out. Is Ronaldo Lopez good or is he not? Because he's nasty, And then the next day, he's the worst pitcher in baseball. He did lead the American League in earned runs with 110 earned runs given up. He also gave up 35 home runs and ended the season with a 5.38 ERA. This was just the season after having a pretty solid 3.91 ERA in 2018. I don't know what I'm getting from Ronaldo Lopez, so unfortunately he is going to make today's video. All I really have to say about J.A. Happ is he made $17 million and it had a 5.22 FIP to go along with a 4.91 ERA. If you're a Yankees fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He was not good, and every time he touched the bump, you knew he was going to give up 5 runs with a couple bombs in between. Just not good enough. But thank you guys for watching. I hope that you did enjoy. If you did, slap a like on this one. If you disagree with any of my picks, please let me know in the comment section down below. And also, subscribe. We're on the way to 200,000 subs. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know if you have any ideas, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.